Hi guys, how are you? How are you? I'm back as always. And it's been a very good couple of days. I've just come back from getting my nails done. I got my nails done and now I'm looking beautiful. I'm looking beautiful. The lady, she did such a fantastic job. And yeah, she's just so good at what she does. What can I say? Um, so today I wanted to just quickly talk about how I started building wealth and how I ended up with a six-figure net worth at 27. Um, and yeah, it's a long story, but I'm gonna try and condense it down into bits. Um, so I'll quickly start by saying, um, now that I'm in the process of planning, a wedding and everything, all that, and me and my guy, we've been talking a lot. By the way, you really need to know everything about a guy, like his finances. Like I have seen his crypto, I have access to his crypto, I have access to his bank account, I have access to another one of his bank accounts. Like you really need to know everything that a guy has when before you get married. And there's like a ton of conversations that you need to have. And actually, I was really I didn't even know he wanted to marry me initially because when he first mentioned marriage, I we were still quite in. It was like maybe 4 or 5 months. Um, but he was like, oh, he just said one day when I was cooking, he was like, babe, if I'm gonna have a wife, I'd love her to cook for me on a regular basis. And I was thinking, what's he talking about? I'm just cooking you a meal. Like it's not even that deep. Um, and lo and behold, later on, he actually let me know, but I guess that was like a precursor to him trying to hint to me. Um, but yeah, today I wanted to just quickly talk about how I started building wealth and how I ended up. So I did how I ended up with a six-figure net worth. So I did a net worth calculation recently, and I was pleasantly surprised to see it was six figures. And there's a long journey to this, and this was even minus like any liabilities I have. It was still six figures, and I was like, wow. So there's a long journey to this. I've actually written it down. Like I have like a whole thing that I'm gonna talk with. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about was the first part of this journey was because I was fortunate. Like I said, the first part of this journey was listening to my parents. So I was fortunate to have really intelligent parents, but you can still do this even though you don't have even if you don't have parents that you love or you get on with or you're close with or have good advice to give you. My mom always told me, and right from a young age she was putting in confidence into me, and she was always telling me, like you can do anything you want to do. And essentially she encouraged me to like get a degree, and she encouraged me to be the top of my class. And she told me, and I didn't really care about being the top of my class. I was someone that was very much into like sports and running and all of that. I actually was part of the cross country club in my, I was part of the cross country club in my secondary school. I really loved going for like runs. We would run around Hyde Park. And she was like, be the top of your class. So when I got to A levels, after I come back from boarding school, when I got to A levels, I really tried my best to focus. And there was one subject that I really loved, and that subject was religious studies. I really loved religious studies because it's not just reading the Bible. We was learning about John Hick's replica theory. We were learning so many different things. And I ended up being the top of that class. The first time I went there, I had like a U in the first ever paper I wrote. The second paper, I had an A. And I ended up not just being the top of that class, but being the top of the entire subject in my entire school. So what that meant was when I was applying for universities, they told me that if I was to reach a certain number of grades, they would give me a scholarship based on academic excellence. And lo and behold, I made those grades, and I even went over those grades. And so I got an extra £2,000 every year I was at university. So I was at university for 3 years. So I got £6,000 just for being the top of my class in that subject. And So that was just extra. That was one way I started making money before I'd even started making like proper money. Now I've been working since I was 15. My first ever job was a fast food restaurant job. I was working at the most disgusting place in Wembley Stadium. It was disgusting. And literally I was like serving beer and chips and all that stuff to like drunk people off their heads, watching the NBA game or watching the Premier League or whatever crap they come to watch. And yeah, I said to myself, oh my God, I don't want to be like this. So when I don't want to be doing this all my life. This is just, how I want to learn. So when I went to university, I didn't really take university seriously. I didn't really, I wasn't really like interested in parts of the subject I was learning. I was too busy working. I was in like 3 different jobs. It was nuts. I was working. And at the time I had moved out of my parents' house because I moved out of my parents' house when I was 17 and I came back later on. And I just realized that my mom was like, you need to focus on your studies. And I didn't. And I ended up not doing very well in my undergrad, which was difficult for me because I was someone who was so good in my A-level studies, and so for me to not do well in my undergrad was like mad hard. And that was the first lesson I learned. Listen to your parents. When I listened to my parents, I got a £6,000 scholarship. When I didn't listen, I ended up not doing well in my undergrad. And then the second thing I did was I realized that I don't know what it was. When I was younger, me and my parents, we watched Britain's Got Talent, and there was like, I think the winner, George Sampson, who I don't think anyone really knows him anymore because he's faded, because fame is very hard to maintain. And because you're famous doesn't mean you're rich. Sadly, the people on Love Island are learning this. Because you're famous doesn't mean it translates to money. Because you have 4 million followers doesn't mean you have $4 million. Okay? And when I watched, and he won, my mom was like, oh, maybe he might be able to get a house without, using a mortgage with some of the money. And I said to myself, what's a mortgage? Because I think I was like 12, and my mom was like, oh, that's when you get money from the bank, but you have to pay the bank back. And I didn't really like the idea of having to pay a silly bank money back. I was like, no, I don't want to pay bank money. So, I said to myself when I was younger, I'm never going to take out a mortgage. I'm going to buy my house outright like a bad person. And my mom was like, oh, that's very ambitious. I like that. So yeah, I ended up, sorry guys, I've written what I want to talk about because I have to organize myself. I ended up saying, okay, so where do I want my house to be? And this was when I was younger. I was thinking, where do I want my house to be? And I said to myself, first of all, before I think about where I want to buy my house, I need to think about whether I want to be married. Now, I asked myself, do I want to be married? I said, I don't know. But if I decide I change my mind in the future, I would want to move into my husband's house. I wouldn't want to have a man move into my house because the kind of man I'd be interested in wouldn't want to move into my house anyway. So, and this was like, I was like 18, 19. I was thinking about this. And I told myself, I don't want to get married until I'm 100% sure that I'm financially stable. And I don't want to get married when I'm too young either. So I said, okay, what I'm going to do is when I do finally get the chance to buy a house, I'm not going to do it in the UK. Because I could have bought a house in the UK if I wanted. It's not hard. I was being offered, different things left, right, and centre. But I said, no, I'm going to buy it somewhere else. And then when I get married, we can buy a house together, or he can buy one and I'll move into his. And so essentially, I ended up looking for places, looking for parts, cities where I wanted to buy a house. And before I did this, I realized this, and this is where the second part comes in. I needed to get my passport, my Nigerian passport. Now, my Nigerian passport was a mad struggle, but I knew that in order to build wealth and have investments where I wanted it, I needed a dual citizenship. Now, I was a citizen. I traveled to Nigeria when I was a kid, but I was fucking 4. Like, what the hell did I know? I wasn't thinking about wealth. I was thinking about Fanta and fucking Coke. I wasn't thinking about wealth. I was thinking about Coca-Cola and other things, And so I traveled to Nigeria on my own for the first time when I was 19. And when I had left school, This was a very difficult period for me actually, because obviously I told you guys before I didn't do well in my undergrad. I'd left school. I was living at home rent free for 2 years. This is very important. This really helped me because what I then did was I used my money to then travel around Europe for a little bit and just check out how other people lived their lives, the kind of places they were living in, the kind of things they were doing. I went to Cannes. I went to Prague. I said, where do I want to buy my house? Where do I want to base my house? Where do I want to buy my first investment property? Where? And then I traveled to Lagos on my own. And I said, okay, Lagos, I need to invest in my home country. I need to invest. This is where my vibe is. This is where I feel I see my future in terms of investment and all of that stuff. So I saw a very upscale neighborhood like Lekki. And Lekki is where like musicians are, celebrities are. Lekki, Banana Island, which is literally where like the politicians are, the billionaires, all of that. If you guys know Nigerian politicians are billionaires. It's nuts. So I said, okay, this is where I want my house to be. This is where I want my place to be. And so I embarked on that journey of getting a passport, which was really hard. I suffered deeply to get a passport. I even quit my job to fully focus on getting this passport because I knew, and I could do that. I could quit my job because I was living at home. My parents weren't necessarily happy about that, but they also knew that I was determined that getting my passport wasn't just like a fickle thing. I was doing it with a long-term goal in mind. And I think I was working at the NHS at the time. And so, yeah, I quit my passport and I quit my job and I worked hard 3-4 months to get my passport. Getting your Nigerian passport in UK is really tough, by the way. It's not even easy. I've seen grown men cry at the passport office. So, yeah, I got my passport finally. And then I said, okay, now I can embark on this journey. So this was the second part of my journey. So the next part was, now that I had my passport, I needed a proper career. I was sick and tired. I was working in like a warehouse. Like I was sick and tired of working. I think I did like 3 different warehouses. I was like, this is not for me. This is not the kind of life I want to be living. I wasn't working in a warehouse for long, but it was too long for me. And I was like, no, this isn't. So I said to myself, I need to get a career. Now, because I didn't do well in my undergrad, it was hard. But I still had some money saved from my student finance and from the scholarship I had. So I said, let me pay for my master's. I was really fortunate that my parents also gave me some additional income. They basically bought me food, my entire course. And they gave me a small deposit to put towards my master's deposit. But I paid the rest myself. My master's course wasn't cheap. I paid at least 90% of that all on my own. And yeah, when I started my master's, I researched. This is the next part, guys. Researching the education that you want to embark on. I deeply, deeply researched for weeks the course I wanted to do, the outcome of those courses, what are the success rates of the universities that offer these courses. I didn't want to go to university that didn't offer a good success rate. What's their pass rate? How many students pass their courses? This is the research you need to do that a lot of people don't learn when they're 17. So I did that. And yeah, I ended up choosing international business, extended MSc international business, which is what I studied with finance. And I remember like fully focusing. I was 100% focused this time because remember in my undergrad I wasn't focused. I was 100% focused this time. And then I realized, okay, so now that I've got into a master's course, and I now need a proper job. And I don't just need any job. I need a job that's remote. And by this time, I haven't really started building wealth yet. I haven't. I'm still not, I haven't started building, but I'm on the right path at this point. So I said, okay, I need a remote job. I can't be going to any office and studying. I'm not going to do that. And I had my own apartment at the time, and the rent wasn't cheap. Because remember, guys, I only lived at my parents' house between the ages of 22 to 24 when I came back from university. Before then, I had my own apartments. I moved out. I first moved out of my parents' house at 17. I moved out twice. So I moved out after 24, and I said to myself, okay, no, no, no. I now need a real remote job where I can actually like have the time to study and work. So I was making applications that completely changed my CV, everything. And I finally found this awesome property tech company. And yeah, I was the best. And so they hired me, and I moved up very fast because I had a lot of enthusiasm, and I was just really, it was what I like. I like business and that kind of stuff. So the first year, I think I was just like part time, and then they promoted me, and then they promoted me again. And I ended up working really closely, and like I was working really closely with my CEO or my COO, and my COO liked me so much that she started mentoring me. So obviously my salary increased, and then it got to the point where, because I had started my masters, I had received excess money. I had paid certain things, and I still had the money from the scholarship, and I still had the money from my first degree, and I was working. On top of that, I was able to like have quite a lot of excess funds. Like I had a lot of excess funds. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go, now that I've traveled to Nigeria, I've got my passport, I'm going to buy a house in Lekki. And I knew exactly where I was going to buy. I had like a property manager already set up. I did due diligence researching these people, because it's very easy to get scammed and duped in Nigeria. I did a lot of research, and I found that there was a property company that was owned by a guy who had links between UK, Nigeria, and they just had the best properties. And their clients were people who were well known. So I was like, okay, this is good. So I went ahead and I purchased my first property with them. And guys, do you know what? Buying a house in Nigeria has led me to understand that a lot of people in the UK are poor, because most people in the UK can barely pay their mortgage, and even after 30 years they may not have paid their mortgage off. But buying a house in Nigeria is a different kind of beast. It's a different kettle of fish. You only get in my property company only gave me 2.5 years, and that was a long term for them. Sometimes most of the people that bought houses there, it was 6 months, 12 months. And these houses weren't cheap. These houses, I saw 500k pounds houses in Lekki. There were £1 million houses in Lekki. And it doesn't matter how expensive these houses are, you must pay within the payment term. So if you're buying a house of £1 million, you must pay everything within 12 months. And this really gave me serious drive. I purchased a house that was just under 6 figures. And I was like, okay, I now have 2.5 years to pay a house that's just under 6 figures. Like, do you know how much pressure that is? It was nuts, because I would essentially have to create so many various different streams of income. At this point, I'm now paying for my apartment, and I'm paying for my apartment, and my apartment had all bills included. It's not even this expensive apartment I'm living in now that has no bills included. My apartment had all bills included. So at that point, I was paying for school fees, I was paying my apartment, and I had started paying for the property in Nigeria, in Lekki. So it was mad. I had billings. Billings was coming out of my ass. Billings was coming out of my eyeballs. I was called Billings. My name was Billings. Billings Tessie. That's what my name was. It was crazy. So yeah, at that point, I realized, okay, I'm probably going to be promoted again, but I don't have time to wait to be promoted. I need excess funds now. And this is where the next part comes in, which was starting my business. Or was it being mentored by powerful people? No, I think it was starting my business. No, actually, no, it was being mentored by powerful people. So I told you guys before that I'm on very good terms with my COO, and she started advising me that, we know you want a promotion, and we're probably going to promote you, but we know how fast you are. And my COO was like, you're too intelligent and you're too fast and we're not going to be able to promote you in the time that you want us to promote you. So she was like, you need to consider starting something yourself in your spare time. And she was being real with me. She was being real. She didn't even have to say that. She was being real with me. And she even like got her partner to speak to me, and she was like, trying to advise me. And on top of that, when I went to Nigeria, I I met a politician, and we went out briefly. Like it's hard to explain. We didn't go out. I didn't go out with him. I didn't go out with him all. Like it was just literally one outing, and he saw me in like a supermarket, and this was actually my recent trip. So he saw me in the supermarket, and I was talking to my friend, and he was like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm from the UK." And he was like, "Oh my God, we should definitely have a chat. I want to know more about what you're doing." And he was just curious and interested. And he offered to, he was like, "Do you guys want to go down to the polo range? Let's, hang out and talk." And it was just a really awesome conversation with a random Nigerian politician. And that really also opened my mind and gave me ideas. And on top of that, before I met my, so I've had, so before I met my current fiance, there was a guy that I met who I was dating very briefly back in 2019. And he was I suspect he was probably a millionaire. He was quite wealthy. I've had access to wealthy men before. He was quite wealthy. And he was really just interesting because he actually offered me so much advice on like how to get myself to where I wanted to be. He had a lot to tell me. He was, he had like his own law firm. It was mad. And I learned a lot from him. And on top of that, he spoiled me rotten. So because he spoiled me as well, he would send me money here or there, this and that. And remember, I'm still saving money because I've been working since I was 15. I've been working, I'm working all these disgusting fast food jobs. So I have never stopped saving. And so that also helped me as well because essentially I didn't have to spend my money because he was always spoiling me so much. So I could just save and save and save and save. So, and it's even the same thing with my current friend. He just spoils me so much. Like I'm so fortunate. And essentially being mentored by my COO, my parents' advice, meeting people, in my current line of work, I build long-term relationships with clients. So sometimes I can be talking to someone who wants to purchase something of £10 million and just seeing the way they talk and just seeing how they move. I monitor that, I take note of that, and I adopt some of these approaches to my own, only the ones I feel that suit my character and suit what I'm trying to do with my life. And so the next step for me, since my COO told me, okay, you're basically like a rock star in our company, like you're just too much, you might need to consider starting something on your own. And guys, another thing I will say that really helped me to start building wealth was that I wasn't afraid to bill my CEO for things. Like I wasn't afraid to say, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? I want to go to this event. I want to go to this networking event. I want to go to this conference. Can you pay for this? Can you pay for this? Can you expense this? Can you expense this? Can you expense that? I wasn't afraid to do that, and you can't be afraid to do it. But you do need to back it up. If you're going to do that, you need to be performing high. Like if you're not performing well, then I don't know, you don't have leverage, So yeah, the next part would be all of this led me to starting my business. And at this time, remember, I've already bought the house, but the problem is now I need to pay for this house super fast. And if you see in the previous videos I've done, in fact, one of the first videos I did, I was talking about how expensive the house was. And it was hard, like it was because I was paying the house, paying school fees, and I was paying rent. It's nuts. So, the things I used to do, I tried not to do anymore. Like I was going out, I was getting my teeth done, and I got my teeth done twice. And after that, once I bought the house, I just couldn't do that. I was like, okay, no, we need to focus. We need to focus. And when I realized that I wanted to start my own thing, oh my God, bearing in mind, guys, that I've tried starting a business 4 times. The first time I tried starting a business was when I was 17 before I entered university. I tried to start a clothing line and I didn't really know what target audience I was doing, what, the segmentation. I didn't really know. I didn't have a brand. That's the problem. I didn't have a brand at all. So that didn't go really well. I only really got pity sales from like my family, which was fun. It was nice, the pity sales, but it wasn't nice because I'd spent like so much money getting random stuff that I hadn't been branded. So that was a fail. The second time I tried to start a business was also a fail because I tried to do like a blog and that didn't work. And then that was basically a fail because I didn't know how to monetize it. Then the third time I tried to do like a business, and essentially I oh god, I can't even remember what happened. I actually succeeded a little bit because I got a lot of attention on my blog. However, I wasn't able to keep it up and monetize it enough. So I got brand deals from big brands on Instagram, but they were sending me like loads of free clothes. Sometimes they would pay, but it wasn't to the level that I needed them to pay to live off it. They were sending me like tons of clothes and bags and stuff and makeup, but I don't need makeup to live. I need money. Like, so yeah, that was kind of a success, kind of not. The fourth time, which is now, I started a business. By this time, I had enough life experience and I had done my master's and I graduated, with a really good result this time. In fact, when I graduated, my family gave me this they gave me this congrats card, which I love, and it's got like all my family's stuff in it, and I just keep this because it's just a pinnacle of achievement for me. And when I started my business the fourth time, this time I had enough experience to know what I was good at, what I could sell. And I realized, okay, so from working this high position in this company, I'm good at building long-term relationships with people, especially people with money. Like I'm good at doing that. And I said to myself, this time with this business, I don't want to have a business that caters for the masses. I want to have a specific clientele. So, and I didn't focus on the visuals. I didn't have a website or a social media page when I first started my business. I wanted to figure out if my business worked and if I had a market for it and if there were people that were interested in my services. I started my business during the pandemic. So my first thought was making sure that the business was pandemic proof. I needed to make sure I could operate my business any point in time, in any kind of situation, whether an epidemic, whether a pandemic, whatever. I needed to make sure that my business would never be shut down because I was seeing people's businesses getting shut down and I was like, whoo, I don't want that to be me. I didn't want my business to be interrupted by postal services, by, people, by a physical location. So my business is completely online, no physical location, nothing. And I said to myself, okay, so I needed to figure out what I wanted, what was the selling point. And I realized that my personality, my character is a selling point. And yeah, I realized that, the pandemic changed how people thought and everybody wanted freedom and everybody wanted a remote job. And I looked at how much a remote job changed my life and allowed me to get in, allowed me to get around people that were not only wealthy, but also incredibly knowledgeable, be mentored by a knowledgeable, powerful person. It really helped. And essentially, when I started the business, I had like 2 clients originally. And the first client I had was actually one of my best friends, who really actually is like a success story of my business because they were completely unemployed for years. And when I first had him as my client, I realized, oh my God, this service should be a premium service. It shouldn't be a service that is for everybody. So I marketed my business as a luxury premium service that caters to people who are looking for remote work, people who have never done remote work before. And I'm essentially guiding them through that process. And this service is not cheap. It's okay. I'll give you an example. Like with my first ever client, I made about £3,000 off my first client. And I went from one client to like almost 50 now. So that should give you an example. That should give you an idea of how I'm very meticulous with the kind of clients I take on. So just because you want to use my service does not mean I will accept you as my client. I only accept people as my client that I'm sure can 100% afford the service, that really have the time and energy, because they're the ones that are the most successful. So, and even the way I structured my business that I would have a fee at the beginning and I would have a fee at the end. So, either way, it's perfect for me. And when I started this business, there was so much interest. I didn't realize how many people needed something like this. I tried to think of it as, okay, this was a problem that I encountered in my life, and I solved this problem for myself. Other people will probably want the same problem solved for themselves as well. And this was when the business actually started becoming successful. This is the first ever business I've done that is successful. Like, the other day I got